First off, welcome everyone to our community conversation on navigating home. Thank you, Dorian Johnson and Ken Nixon, for being here with us today and your willingness to share your experience, insights, and expertise with us. Just a quick reminder to everyone that we are recording this chat. So if you do prefer not to be visible, just turn your cameras off. So now's a good time to do that. My name is Jennifer Paul, and for those of you who don't know me, I am the Development Director at Families Together. I have been here for, amazingly to me anyway, about 7.5 years, and it's been a great experience for me. I am excited to be moderating this conversation today, and want to first, with two team members from Families Together who are likely are new faces to many of you. So I wanted to first ask them to introduce themselves briefly. And Dorian, could we start with you?
Absolutely. Thanks you all for having me. My name is Dorian Johnson. I am the Housing Programs Director here at Families Together. Been here since late March, and so going on about 7 months now. So still new in the game, but happy to be here. I have enjoyed all that I am learning and experiencing and being able to lead an amazing team in the work we do within Wake County.
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. And I'm wondering if Ken is having technical difficulties. Ken, are you able to oh, there, I see you. If you unmute, could you introduce yourself now briefly?
Yes, can you guys hear me? I'm having a little technical difficulties right now.
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
My name is Ken Nixon. I'm the Housing Navigator here at Families Together. I've been with the agency since February. I really love what I do. I work with an awesome group of people, and I'm just excited to be able to share with you some of my, responsibilities and things that we do on a daily basis today.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much to both of you. Before getting into the conversation with Dorian and Ken, I'd like to just provide you all with some background on the current landscape connected to housing and homelessness in our community. And Sadie, if you could move the slide. There we go. As many of you are aware, our community is grappling with an escalating housing crisis. And this fall, we at Families Together are focusing on the challenges and solutions to navigating home for families experiencing homelessness. You're probably reading in the news on a regular basis some pretty alarming statistics, and we're going to go over with a few of them with you here. In the last year, as reported in the News and Observer, Raleigh rental prices have soared 50%. Wake County now has a shortage of 50,000 units that are affordable, meaning that we need 50,000 more units in Wake County to meet the need of affordable housing. This gap of 50,000 is disproportionately impacting extremely low-income families. And so the consequences of these housing challenges are being seen in trends around homelessness. And unfortunately, there has been a twofold increase in homelessness overall in Wake County in just the last 2 years. So basically since the pandemic. We now estimate that 7,000 children will experience homelessness this year. These are families with children that are most of whom are couch surfing or in motels, but the number of children and families that are unsheltered has increased at a truly alarming rate of 300%. And this is families with children that are living in backyard sheds, storage units, tents, and cars. And the number has, like I said, 300% from 100 around the time of the pandemic to 300 in the most recent count. And from what we are hearing, that number is going to continue to rise. So navigating to a stable and sustainable home is harder than ever before for these families in particular. And it's a complex problem. Families Together is taking a multifaceted approach. We're working with our partners to help more families move from homelessness to home. And during our fall campaign, part of what we're doing is raising awareness. So we want to keep people in our community informed, people who are concerned about these issues. And we're also raising funds around several core areas. So our goals are to expand our emergency shelter, which keeps families together, and we prioritize those families that are most at risk of separation in traditional shelter to go into our emergency shelter, which is a non-congregate program. We are also working to advance multiple housing strategies, which we're going to talk a little bit more with Dorian and Ken. And we are working to provide intensive support so that each family that we're working with can achieve long-term housing success. And we're growing a property portfolio. So we're working at Families Together to increase the number of housing units that we own or lease so that we can ensure that they are genuinely affordable to the families that we house. So I'm so pleased to have Dorian and Ken with us today so they can share a bit about their unique perspectives and experiences in light of what are truly enormous challenges, and give you an overview of how Families Together is working to help more families navigate home. I will begin first by asking some questions, and we'll have a bit of a discussion, and then we'll open it up to everyone a little later in the program. So please be thinking about your questions and hold on to them for a few minutes while I have this conversation with Dorian and Ken. So Dorian, let's start with you, and if you could kind of give us a few, first off, inform people who are on the call here about how families get connected to Families Together in the first place, and what are some of the living situations they're in when they first come to us.
Yeah, so families are connected to us generally through what is known as the coordinated access system, or sometimes it may be referred to as coordinated entry. And so for those who don't know, this is a system that's HUD mandated. It's evidence-based system, and it's developed to ensure that everyone experiencing a housing crisis has fair and equal access to a system that works to rapidly, let's say, identify, assess, prioritize, refer, and connect them to housing and services for which they qualify based on their needs. And so the goal is to move as quickly as possible from homelessness to housing, utilizing a housing first approach. And so in the past, I believe the approach was a housing ready approach that was utilized. And during that time, it was a belief that a person experiencing homelessness needed treatment, transitional housing, or other steps in order to become ready for housing. And so evidence has shown that moving a person into housing first as quickly as possible in conjunction with appropriate wraparound services, what it does is that it honors the dignity of the individual and results in a much higher success rate in achieving housing stability. And so through the coordinated access system, individuals and families are guided and supported on the road to housing, and that's how they usually come to us. Living conditions, as you asked, can vary from residing in other shelters within the community, from on the brink of being exited from those shelters within the community, to living in cars, motels. It's just a case-by-case basis. Everybody's different when they come to us, but through the coordinated access systems, families can be matched to us for shelter and also rapid rehousing services.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. That was a really informative, good overview of the complex coordinated access system. And so can you, we've talked a little bit, or I've given a quick overview of some of these really difficult challenges that our community is facing. like doubling of the number of homeless people in our community in just 2 years. So could you talk a little bit about our community's homeless support system and how well it's holding up given these challenges? Where are the greatest gaps for families, and how is Families Together responding?
Yeah, so to be honest, I think given the current housing crisis and that it's such a complex kind of never-ending problem, I believe the homeless support system is holding up as best as it can, to be honest with you. But what we can see happening currently also provided a window of opportunity for organizations like ours. And I think Families Together definitely takes advantage of that opportunity to step in and take action where we can. And we're doing a great job at responding to those gaps. And so when I think about the gaps, I often think about what we're doing to expand our portfolio and just being able to house families just in general. So when it comes to emergency shelter, we've increased our capacity by 15 to serve families through hotel shelter services. For families that are referred to us for shelter, we now have an emergency shelter mental advocate who provides case management services to those families. And then we also, like I said earlier, have our rapid rehousing program that moves families out of local shelters or from unsheltered situations into permanent housing and kind of sets them up for long-term success. And so services include housing search and placement assistant, case management, life skills training, connection to resources, and temporary rental and utilities assistance. We also are kind of filling in those gaps with affordable housing. And so we have our master lease program, which takes on a sort of transitional housing model that extends for up to 6 months. And during this time, families are being prepared for permanent housing to have a lease, which is going to be in their own name. We also have bridge transitional housing, which are units that are owned by Families Together. And so this type of housing is really ideal for families who may not qualify for housing based on some of the requirements set by property management companies. For example, a lot of companies may say you can't have a criminal record in the past 2 years, or sometimes you can't have eviction. Different things like that are also barriers to housings that families face. And so this is one of the gaps that we're responding to by having our own units and owning our own units. We can kind of set our own rules and regulations and allow for things that may not be allowed with other property management companies. We also have permanent affordable rental housing, where we accept housing choice vouchers and permanent supportive housing vouchers. And those vouchers cover rental assistance. One more thing. I think I have one more. I think you asked about. And then, oh goodness, there's so much we could talk about today. I don't think we have enough time to talk about it all. But the work of the FEED team, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the work of the FEED team. And so the Families Together Financial Empowerment and Employment Program builds on our mission to move families from homelessness to home. And so the FEED team develops and implements new strategies and direct services to increase economic mobility of families experiencing homelessness. And so there's 2 main focuses of the FEED team, and that's financial health literacy and employment support and preparation. And so in terms of employment support, the FEED team works to help clients recognize, plan for, and achieve their financial goals. That begins with a comprehensive financial health review, and then we explore the many aspects of a client's financial health, including their budget, banking relationships, and their credit. And then from there, we can create an individualized plan with each client that includes their goals and steps necessary to improve their financial health. So I think one of the ways in which that sums up your question, but Families Together is bridging the gap and filling in those gaps by creating our own ways to do things to where the county, the state, or the city may have certain restrictions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's trying to come up with new solutions has been an area of focus for Families Together now for several years. And I think you gave a great overview. Some of the newer parts of what we're doing is that affordable housing portfolio. And now we have, I think, 23 units that we own or lease. So those are units where we control, like Dorian, you were saying. And some of it, I think one of the really important things is that we do accept those housing choice vouchers, where so many private landlords don't do that. They don't have to. They have a legal right not to accept that as a form of payment. And then that work of the FEED team, they've been amazing. And I think the increase in income they've been experiencing or been able to have and show is about 22 or 25%
Mhm.
in income of families, which is so critically important and as the rental prices increase so dramatically. So yeah, thank you for all that really great overview. So Ken, let's go over to you and talk a little more, specifically about one really critical role at Families Together, and that is the Housing Navigator. So could you tell us a little bit about what it is to be a housing navigator? Do you work with all the families, like right when they enroll at Families Together? And just give a sense of what your job, your day-to-day life job is like.
Okay, sure. Well, as a housing navigator, I work closely with our rehousing manager and our mentor advocates, and I help in identifying appropriate housing opportunities for families enrolled in our program. This starts with making contact with landlords, property management companies, apartment complexes that are willing to actually work with families together. I don't typically work with families in the beginning of the enrollment process, but I do work with the program intake coordinator and the client's mentor advocate, just kind of finding out what the specific needs are of the family, looking at the makeup of the family, seeing, maybe what size of unit that they need, how much they can actually afford, the area that they would like to try to move to. And if there are any barriers that we need to be aware of, because barriers are very important to find out, because so many things can, help or hinder someone with finding a home. So I like to initially look to see who we already have that we may be able to partner with. And then from there, I start what I call a fishing process. If I'm looking for one family in particular, that's kind of like my rod and reel. I'm going for one thing and I'm looking for just this family. But then there's other times where I'm looking for partners that are going to partner with Families Together as a whole. So that at that point, I'm casting out a wide net. And that's on my daily basis when I'm making calls, emails, texts, looking out, reaching out to, again, property managers, landlords, private landlords, apartment complexes, seeing who's willing to work with us. And with that, there are several obstacles that we have to overcome sometimes. When some people hear who we are, they may have had a great experience with maybe another agency before. So I have to explain, listen, this is what Families Together is, this is what we do, and here's how we may be different. I like to talk about how we have, an inclusive unit that helps in almost every facet of our clients' lives. We don't just say, hey, here's some money, take off, we'll see you later. Because in those situations, they have seen clients that have come from other places sometimes, and they don't do well. But we let them know that we are not just going to start and then disappear. And sometimes that does put them at ease, but then you're also still fighting just the stigma that's attached to the word homeless, people, families experiencing homelessness. And that can be a barrier to overcome. But with the proper diligence and just continuing to work at it without being overbearing, it usually helps a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, and it seems like that your role is forming a relationship with the prospective landlords and then the actual landlords and property owners is so key, and that's what you're doing. So what are some of the challenges that you encounter as you try to find housing and secure
Some
housing
of the,
for families?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also I was just going to say, also just follow asking, in this critical or incredibly competitive rental market, where are the families ending up? Can you give some examples? So challenges
Absolutely.
and where are they ending up?
Okay. With challenges, we're finding that, it's kind of tough because even if they were out on their own, if you don't have a great credit history, if you may have some things in your background that could potentially hold you back, or any prior evictions, that can make it very difficult to house our clients. And we have to kind of chip away and let the landlords know that we will be there with them every step of the way. Also letting them know that we are not a subsidy program, because sometimes immediately when they hear, who we are, they're like, well, are you going to pay? And it's like, we may offer short term, but we are not going to just pay the rent the entire time. So just breaking down those barriers. Another challenge that we have is some of our clients have Section 8 vouchers, but if they don't have, a job that's going to help with the rent, is not considered rent reasonable, that can be a little difficult to overcome as well. And then due to the rising housing market and the rent ranging from anywhere between $1,300 to $1,600 on average, and our average family earning between $2,400 to $2,600 a month, is really difficult for them to meet that. Usually between 2 and 2.5 times rent that is requested, and sometimes now I've seen it 3 times, and some landlords want 700 plus credit scores, and that's incredibly hard when you're looking at properties that may have been properties in a lower income neighborhood, but because of the influx of transplants and the rising rates of buying a home, more people are looking to rent. And when you can rent to people that don't have these barriers, a lot of people are doing that. And they're fixing up these places and charging rent that was probably 3 times what it would have been prior. So that's even further decreasing the number of affordable housing units that we have available. So with that being said, we are looking outside of Wake County in terms of trying to find places to house our families. Right now, we have several families that are in Raleigh. We have families in Durham. And then we're also looking in places like, we have families in Butner, Zebulon, and Wilson, which is a little out of where we usually work. And we also have a family that should be moving into a unit in Zebulon soon. Fuquay soon as well. So those are some of the places that, we've had to look outside to try to secure that affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, thank you so much. And I think sometimes you're also might be connecting some families to our own portfolio of housing. So, I mean, this really must be a painstaking and high pressure experience for you and the families, trying to get somebody out of homelessness and help them get into a home. There's so much kind of trauma that must be going on. Is there a story that you could share about a particular family, and just talk a little bit about that journey, the barriers that they faced, and how you help them overcome them?
Sure. We worked with a particular family, and it was a lot of moving pieces in this process. He'd come through our program previously, and we, got him set up. He was living really good, had a nice place for him and his family, ended up getting a housing choice voucher, and it was through RHA. So he got the voucher, and prior to moving to the new residence, but after notifying his current landlord that he was moving, he found out that the address that he was moving to, even though it said Raleigh, it was actually in Durham County. From there, he ended up not having a place to stay. So he was he was between one of his friend's couches and living in his car, and his son was able to stay with the friend because he had to leave because the landlord of the friend found out that he was there, but he did allow the son to stay. He ended up sending his daughter to live with his mom. So they're kind of, disjointed at this point. So what he did is they reached back out to the Access Hub and they reconnected them with us. We were able to get the family a hotel through the Bridge to Home project funding. And from there, we worked with getting him an extension, and he got his voucher back. And we were able to get him into one of the Families Together owned condo units here. And that was great because he did have an eviction from a prior residence, and his credit was not, more than likely it probably wasn't going to be accepted by many of the landlords, at least not in a place that he would want his family or any of us would want our families to be in. So because we had that unit available, and it took a lot of work to get it completed, and the inside of the unit was perfectly fine, but the outside of the unit on the ground and all the stairs and leading up to the third level unit, all of that had to be repainted to meet the habitability standards. And we got all of that completed. They all moved in. I was able to actually be there on move-in day. And then also when they came to tour the place, and just seeing his children excited to have their own room and be there together, and then see him just teaming with pride. It was an amazing experience. And that's one of the things that I really love about working here. You actually get to see how people's lives are affected. And he was able to get them enrolled in school, and he got a new job. So this family is truly back together, and they just have such an incredible future ahead of them.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Ken. That is, really uplifting to hear, and to know that a family that had been separated is reunited through that work and through your work, and families together. Thank you so much for sharing that. Dorian, it's really great, I think, to hear a little bit from Ken and to get a feel for the on the ground experience of his role. And I think folks would be interested in learning a little bit more about how he is part, and you are part of a larger team, the housing programs team, which has grown a lot in the last year. Could you give a bit of an overview of your team and maybe some highlights of a couple of roles?
Yeah, sure thing. So we've hired more even since I've come on board, and I've heard about the 7 that started this whole thing, and now we're even larger. But I truly believe that the program team as a whole is the meat of this organization, because half of the things we do and the work and how we serve families within this community would not be done without the program team. And so we function, like I said, as a team, but we have an intake coordinator, we have an emergency shelter mentor advocate, we also have a pre-housing mentor advocates, stabilization mentor advocates. We have Ken, who is our amazing housing navigator. We have our rehousing manager. We also have our feed team, which is also sits within the program team. We have 2 financial employment empowerment specialists. We also have a permanent housing mentor advocate, and also a family advocate, and a financial empowerment lead. And so we have 2 positions that I think are awesome, because it sets us apart from other organizations, but also make sure we are serving the needs of the families when they come to us, a holistic kind of service that we're able to provide. So we have 2 staff members who specialize in specific services for our families. And so our behavioral health mentor advocate, and also a family advocate. And so our behavioral health mentor advocate works with families in need of behavioral health services, and our family advocate works to empower and encourage families within our program while on their journey. And so what she does is she follows up with families at the 30-day mark, the 6-month mark, and the 1-year mark. And that's necessary, because sometimes when you're on this journey, it's a tough one, right? When you've experienced trauma, when you've gone through experiencing homelessness, or just trying to get on the right path, sometimes you need that boost. Sometimes you need somebody that's going to be in your corner and say, hey, I've been through this, I've come out on the other side gleaming, and it was a rough process, but I made it through. And so that encouragement is really necessary. And I think our families are benefiting and going to benefit so much from having that position.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the family advocate role has been a great and quick impact that Valentina has been making. Thank you for giving that overview. So my last question before I open it up to everyone for questions is to just ask both of you for your insights on where you see opportunities for families together to grow and make a greater impact in the coming year. And Dorian, why don't we start with you?
When I came on board, I was so amazed at what we're trying to do with the shelter expansion and the cottage court, right? And so I would love to see that, because I think that goes back to your first question of what are those gaps and how can we kind of bridge the gap and fill in those gaps? And that's something that is extremely important. And I think just continues to set us apart and makes us that, premier agency within Wake County that's servicing those who are experiencing homelessness.
Great, yeah, and for those who aren't aware of that, the emergency shelter expansion will be a building, an addition on an existing building that we own, where we would be able to add 4 more emergency shelter units, which are like you say, it's a gap in the community for families. And then the cottage court is our vision for our first housing development, where we would build a small community of homes. A cottage court is small homes that face inward on a common green space. And we have land that we own. And so we do have the site control. We have some preliminary plans, and it is very exciting. So we're hoping to get to roll up our sleeves and get moving on that project soon. Ken, so what about you? What insights would you like to share?
Like I said, I really think that it's so important for us to be able to have units that we own, because like Dorian said earlier, it really removes those barriers, because we control what those requirements are. Some of our cases would be difficult to house without having families together own properties. And I'm not certain of, how big an undertaking of this it would be. I'm sure it'd be huge, and I'm sure it would require a lot of funding. However, I really feel like that would be, if I could wave a magic wand and make it happen, that's what it would be. That would be perfect.
Yeah, more housing.
Yes.
That is great. And so thank you both for the conversation, for sharing your insights. I'd like to open up the floor to questions from the community, those of you on the call. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, the icon that's for raised hand, by navigating to the bar. I think it's navigating to the toolbar and selecting the raise your hand icon. And if you'd rather, you can also submit your question in the chat, and we'll start by asking anybody who might, let's see if there's anyone with their hand raised. If not, feel free to put a question in the chat. Does anybody have any questions for Dorian and Ken, or Ken? See a lot of people out here from the community, which is great.
I see Dee in the comments. She said, in my opinion, we are setting the bar. Absolutely. I believe that to be true as well.
Dorian, can you speak to how many families we house in a year?
So
or how many we serve?
Okay, yeah, I could definitely speak to that. So last year we served 153 families made up of 536 individuals. And within those individuals, there are about 2 to 3 children each.
Mr. Ramirez, is that, I can't read.
Yeah, yeah, Spencer Bradford, actually, not Larissa here at Western Wake.
I was thrown off.
Understandably. I was interested in learning some more about the financial health support work that you do with families. What do you find? What are the components or elements of that you have found generally have the greatest impact on advancing financial stability with the families you're working with? Just, I mean, in terms of like reducing debt, stabilizing income, that sort of thing. What are the specific elements that y'all work at that you see having the greatest impact on the greatest number of your families?
What I believe what you just said, stabilizing income, and so employment, and then also reducing that debt, taking a deep dive into what that looks like. I think one of the great things about that's a component of our kind of fee team and our affordable housing mentor advocate is that there is what we call escrow. And so families are putting their own money into an account each month. And so at the end of their time here and at the end of our program, they are able to take that money and utilize that. And so it's just that kind of teaching process of this is how I budget and this is what I need to make sure I have every month to pay my bills and to pay my necessities and different things of that nature. But those, I believe what you said, are the biggest that we're seeing.
And I think that we've traditionally provided workshops where we provide group life skills training. And with the addition of the fee team, now we can do that one-on-one intensive support. So our team members, led by Harriet Reynolds, are meeting one-on-one with families, going over, like Dorian said, those goals, those setting budgets and credit counseling, which credit repair, things like that. Really trying to get to that place of financial stability, and then working to access better paying jobs. So connecting them with new employment opportunities in the community. And I think part of the team is what they do is they build a bank of employers that are
there are jobs. We send out jobs on thanks to Paul and Tanisha on the fee team. And so there are jobs sent out daily, weekly basis. And so they are really connected within the community to know what's going on, what's happening, and to get our families connected with employment.
Absolutely. And there are some amazing jobs as well that they send out.
They really are. They really are.
I have a question in the chat, and Ken, I think this is for you. I'm sure Dorian, you can jump in too. But how do you decide which family gets an available unit or where to house them? How are those decisions made?
In terms of where to house, that would be, a conversation. That would depend on their resources, how much money they have, if they have transportation or not, if they have a voucher. So it really depends. And now in terms of which family gets an available unit, are they referring to the units that Families Together owns, or just units?
I believe so. I believe Families Together units.
I'm not sure on how they determine exactly who gets the Families Together units. Dorian, you may be able to speak to that.
Yeah. And so there's a process that we take, just kind of looking at overall everything holistically, what the needs are. I will say now all of our units are full, besides units that we need to renovate and that we're looking to kind of flip and everything. But we try to keep our units as full as possible without any kind of strenuous stipulations as far as what qualifies a family.
So it's not time on the waiting list, or it's a confluence of all of the things.
Yes,
right? Okay.
Absolutely.
There any other questions? I've not seen them. Got multiple screens, so I'm trying to look.
I have a question that comes up quite a lot, and it's individual questions based on what an individual should do if they see that someone is or knows someone that's experiencing homelessness, how they should help that individual.
Well, first, I think to anything when we all have experienced at one time in our life somebody coming up to us asking for services or monetary donations or something like that. And so we want to listen to that person first and foremost. We don't want to write them off. We don't want to say, oh, well, I don't know, but we want to listen. The best thing to do would be giving them resources to the Access Hub. And so they can reach out directly to the partnership, specifically, excuse me, like I was saying, to the Access Hub. We can put that number, I can put that number in the chat, or they can email them. And I think that's the best way, because Wade County has a system, and that's the proper way to go about things, and we don't want to circumvent the system too much. Sometimes there are cases where, where we do have to circumvent the system, or the system isn't working for some reason, or there's just an immediate need, and so we try our best to take care of that family. But the system and through the Access Hub is the best way to kind of get those services. The hub is necessary because it triages everything. You go there and then you are pointed in the right direction to who can best serve your needs.
Thank you. And I did stick the website in there, and Ken kindly put in the direct email. So that is in your chat, participants, if that is something you want to gather for future use.
That's great. Yeah, good question too. All right, well, I don't see any other questions. So I think we're going to just, before we wrap up, I did wanted to make a special announcement. But I do want to thank Dorian and Ken, especially for being on today. And this was, I think, a really enlightening conversation, and to get your insights, your perspective, your experience, your expertise while we're amid what is truly a housing crisis. It's very helpful. And if we could, I want to move on to this, just wrap it up with one or two quick announcements. And Sadie, if you wanted to bring the screen up again. So first special announcement is that 1 week from today, on October 18th, we are having a triple impact match day. Some of you are familiar with this kind of match day from participating in the past. We have 3 amazing match funders that include 2 corporate partners, that Pacific Western Bank and First National Bank, who have come together to form a match fund of $32,500. That's $32,500, which is fantastic. We thank them for forming that match fund. And what that means is next Tuesday, if you make a donation to Families Together, we can move on to the next slide. I wanted to just give some examples of what your impact can make. $25 would become $75 with the match from the match fund, and that can provide 3 children with their first night in a warm bed. $100 can provide 10 hours of credit counseling, budget, and employment support, and that's the work of the fee team that Dorian was talking about, that critical work to improve financial stability for the families that we're working with. Let's go on to the next one. So I'm just not going to read every one of these because you can look at them, but if you're inclined to give a larger gift, $1,000 becomes $3,000, and that can help pay for the maintenance and repairs on 2 of our transitional units. So now that we're becoming a property owner, that we need to keep those properties up, and so we have ongoing needs for repairs. $1,200 triples to $3,600, and that could provide cover the rent or the utilities deposits, and cover rental deposits for 3 families transitioning from homelessness. So I think, as you can see, by giving a donation next week, if you can, it will have a much greater impact. So we hope you will join us. Save the date for October 18th, which is 1 week from today. Finally, I want to thank everybody for being here with us today. for your interest in our work. You can tell these challenges are complex, and we know that Families Together can't overcome them on our own. So that's why it's really heartening to see so many of you on the call today. I want to give a special shout out to our friends and longtime partners from the United Way of the Greater Triangle and Band Together who are here. They have been working for months organizing a special collaborative effort to raise $1 million in support of affordable housing nonprofits, including Families Together and 10 other impact partners. So in addition to raising critical funds, we're working collaboratively to raise awareness around the need for more affordable housing in the Triangle. This campaign culminates on October 28th with a big concert at the Red Hat Amphitheater that will feature the Turnpike Troubadours. And we're honored to be a part of that effort. And I think it's a great example of the community coming together to work on this huge societal issue. If you are interested in learning more about that concert and that campaign, or the Triple Match Day, the Triple Impact Match Day, and several other events that we have going on in the fall, I just want to encourage you to go to our webpage, campaign webpage at familiestogethernc.org/navigating-home. And I think that wraps it up for us today. Again, thank you so much for being here. If you do have any questions or thoughts that come up post this meeting, please feel free to get in touch. My email contact information is here on the screen. Our website, again, is familiestogethernc.org. We would love to hear from you. And this, as we said at the beginning, this session has been recorded. We will be sharing that out via email and social media in the next day or so. So for those who weren't able to sign on, we'll be able to get that out to everyone. And that does it. Thanks again for being here. And I hope you guys enjoy this beautiful afternoon.